in 1856 or 7, probably 56, which still stands today on 112th and is known as the Boatman Ainsworth House, currently owned and occupied by Dr. and Mrs. Craig Gunter. This house is listed on both the state and National Registry of Historic Places. The Boatmans lived here for a number of years, during which time 4 of their children were born in this house. Sometime in the 1870s, Willis sold the place to a J.C. Ainsworth, a well-known entrepreneur who owned and operated the Oregon Steam and Navigation Company on the Columbia River. He controlled all transportation on the river during territorial days. Ainsworth also was instrumental in the Northern Pacific Railroad coming north from the Columbia River, and its terminus being in Tacoma, where he owned considerable land. He used this home as headquarters for his Washington enterprises. The place was sold to W.J. Thompson in 1889, a prominent Tacoma businessman, banker, and legislator. Thomas sold it to A.B. Orr in 1839, and the present owners, Dr. and Mrs. Craig Gunter, bought the home in 1971 and have continued to maintain it in its present fine condition. Willis raised sheep and planted a large orchard on this Lakewood property. Furthermore, during this time, he continued to clear land and raise crops on the Puyallup Valley plain. So, when the Boatmans sold their Lakewood property, they moved back permanently to their Puyallup Valley donation land claim. There they built a new home. In the following years, Willis, together with his sons, became major hop ranchers. Hops being being the valley's first permanent commercial crop, I should say. In his latter years, Willis was instrumental in the forming of one of the first banks in Puyallup, of which he served as president for a number of years. The Boatmans had seven children, 4 boys and 3 girls. The third child, Charles, born at Fort Steilacoom during the Indian conflict, was my grandfather. Mary Ann died in about 1911 at the age of 79, but Willis lived on to a ripe old age of 99 years and 3 months, dying in 1926, and I remember it. Now, that finishes my story. If you have any questions, I'd be delighted to try to answer. Do we have the lights, please? You must have some questions.
Is the house in Puyallup still standing?
It is, but you'd never know it. It's been so altered, added on to, but there are certain little features about them that are still there. Talking about houses, it's kind of interesting that the Gunther home and this home, they have the same characteristics. They're the same roof, pitch on the roofs, and a lot of other little features that are the same. And then, furthermore, if you take a look at the buildings down in the old Fort Steilacoom, the ones that they renovated, well, my great-grandfather worked on those too. That's where he learned how to build houses, apparently, because then all his houses look like that. Yes?
You started your story from Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
When did they come, and how did they get to Portland?
Yeah, that's another story, but
I understand, but just briefly.
yeah,
3 or 4 sentences.
they came from Illinois, and they came by covered wagon on Oregon Trail. It took them about 7 months, and they both lost a brother to sickness. And there's a whole lot more to the story. It's in the book. in that book, I tried not only to tell their story, but I took as many diaries as I could of 1852 and took excerpts out of their diaries. So it's got a lot of other stuff besides my great-grandparents.
Could you tell us what happened at the Dalles when they got that far?
Well, when they got to the Dalles, that was really a good resting place, and most of them would rest up for a while. These folks, my folks, were in bad shape, and they had to rest up and restock. They had planned to go over the Barlow Trail over the Cascades, but it was getting late. It was in October, and the snow started falling, so they had to go down to Columbia.
Didn't they have to pay some money to get by?
They did on the Barlow Trail, yeah. And of course, going down to Columbia was not cheap either. They had to either make a raft or hire somebody, which these folks did. And yeah, any other questions? Yes.
Did you follow the ownership of the house through the years of your own life? Because I'm thinking to myself, when I was a student at Clover Park in the late 50s, I used to babysit in that house. Or a woman who'd been a model in New York and had gotten divorced, and she was quite sophisticated, I thought. And she came out here with her 2 little children, and so I tells me she must have been renting because she
You mean
couldn't
in the
possibly afford
Gunther
the
house?
I don't remember her name.
Yeah.
In the house owned by the Gunthers today that you
Yeah.
showed. I remember there was a big barn right next to the house in those days.
Probably one my grandfather built. Well, the Puyallup house, I kind of know the heritage of it. It was originally, when my great-grandfather died, supposed to go to, I think, the Pierce County Historical Society. They donated it to him. But unfortunately, I guess, because there wasn't any money with the donation, the society couldn't afford to keep the place, so it went into private ownership and has been ever since, unfortunately. I've never been in the house, but it had been a chicken dinner in place, and right now it's a apartment house.
Were the comments that you were reading, were these his journal type of thing, or were these Marianne's diaries?
The things that I read you of Willis Boatman, he wrote sometime in the late 1800s, and I don't know when. I have his original stuff. He never dated anything. And, but he wrote that, you know, sometime in the late 1800s. Some of it's awful hard to read. Now, my grandmother, great-grandmother, she wrote the Oregon Trail story.
Okay.
And this is another story, but she kept a diary. But as you can see from when she had her child, she was pregnant all the way across. And she, of course, used that diary in a personal way, and she was writing all kinds of personal stuff. So she wouldn't let anybody read that diary. This is what my mother tells me. And my mother tells me that she encouraged my great-grandmother to sit down and write the story of the Oregon Trail trip. So she took her diary, as far as we can tell, and wrote a story. You know, she's got all kinds of details in this story that she must have had her diary to read.
But left out the little personal.
Yeah, she left all the personal stuff out and just put in the story. And that's what I put in the book.
That's wonderful to have that.
Yeah, and she did real well when you consider wasn't an educated woman. And I tried to leave it just like it was. I had to fill in a little bit and make it make sense. And she wrote that in notebooks, in pencil, and I, of course, made copies of it, but it's kind of interesting.
Did anyone ever get to read her diary?
I don't think so. At least my mom didn't ever read it.
What happened to it?
And then she burned it.
Oh.
That's what Mom says.
Whoa.
Yeah, I hope that's not true and we find it someday, but I don't think so. Oh, donation land claim.
Donation land claim.
Donation land claim is what the government would give you, you know, if you did certain things, proving up the land.
Then he just gave it to you.
Pardon?
Then they just gave it to you, is that right?
Yeah, it would be their land if they would take care of things. And, of course, they actually got that land and settled on it before any treaties were formed, and so it was kind of sticky, but the Boatmans got along with the Indians pretty well. As a matter of fact, if you read my little book, the Indians saved their lives. It was their friendly Indians. This old Indian was living on the property that Willis was claiming, and so Willis said he just let the old guy stay there in his teepee, and he made friends with him. And one night, he came to the door and knocked and told the Boatmans, you better get out of here, because his people were going to kill and burn, I think they said. And so they beat it off to Fort Silicon. And actually, that cabin you saw was the only one that was left in Puyallup Valley that wasn't burned. So I don't know why, but that one was left. Anything else? Well, thank you very much.
Before you go, there's lots of books back here that are for sale, and I'm sure he'd be glad to autograph them for you. So do that before you leave. Thank you for coming. The next meeting will be in June, and it's Carmenville, I think, Madeira.
Good idea.
I'm not familiar with the actress that was there, but never did watch her. But yeah.
You remember you have to be a member before you
What's that?
You have to be a member.
Yeah, you got to be a member to go to the for that tour. And what we're going to do is meet at the Clover Park parking lot. You know, the school parking lot, not next to the swimming pool, but just the other side of the pool. And we'll carpool from that. There'll be a van that'll rotate and bring you over to the place. We'll transport you. Park the car in the lot. We'll take you in because it's limited parking down there in that gated community. Yeah,
There's refreshments back there on the windowsill, is that where they are?
that's right, back here. Cookies and juice. Any other announcements or anything else any questions you want to
I'd
ask?
like to say,
Oh, okay. I don't see Elizabeth. If you want to give me your name and phone number, I'll make sure that she gets the message. If there's anybody else that didn't get a phone call that is a member anyway?
I didn't, but I've spoken to Margaret about
Okay, and the date for the June one is, I think, June 17th. So you would meet at the parking lot sometime prior to 6:45, and we'll be running a loop, picking people up and taking them in. Anything else? Okay, remember the books in the back.